Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talking Logistics, where we have conversations with thought leaders and newsmakers in the supply chain logistics industry. It's my great pleasure to welcome today's program, Todd Burnett, who's Vice President of Managed Services at Robinson Fresh. And today we're going to talk about keeping it fresh, how to improve operational effectiveness and reduce total landed costs in the fresh food supply chain. Now, not all supply chains are created equal, and that's certainly true in the fresh food supply chain. There's a lot of unique considerations involved in this industry, everything from temperature control to ensuring, food safety. So what does it take to, improve operational effectiveness and reduce total landed costs in the fresh food supply chain? Well, that's the kind of the main question that we're going to discuss in today's episode. And it's great to have Todd in the program, who's on the front lines of this industry, working with clients in this area day in and day out to share his insights and advice in this area. So, Todd, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Adrian. So that's right. I've been on the front lines for about 25 years now here at C.H. Robinson and Robinson Fresh. So I've seen our company grow from its North American base and network to a global network of supply chain partners and execution. And quite frankly, we consider it the world's most powerful supply chain platform. So I've worked for the Robinson Fresh division for about 15 years now. It is the fresh side of our business, and it's actually where the company got started about 110 years ago, actually moving produce off of the West Coast, putting it onto rail cars, and moving it into East Coast hubs. So we like to say that we actually developed some of the first perishable supply chains, and we manage some of the first produce supply chains coming off the West Coast. So I'm excited about today and talking to you about some of the challenges and opportunities in these types of supply chains. And I became Vice President of our managed services within Robinson Fresh earlier this year. So I'm responsible for building strategies and solutions for customers to meet the growing demands that happen within these types of supply chains.
Great. No, great background. And I think a lot of folks, when they think of C.H. Robinson, they think of obviously kind of the brokerage operations, and that's what they're very well known for. But, it's this fresh side that was actually the origins of the company and has a lot of, expertise and history in that area. So let's start by, in case people aren't that familiar with some of the, like I said, some of the unique characteristics of the industry. Let's start by talking about the fresh food supply chain. I mean, who are some of the key participants, and what are some of the key processes or challenges involved?
Yeah, so we'll break this down into kind of two parts. So you wanted to know some of the key participants, and then we'll talk about some of the challenges that we see in these types of supply chains. So in fresh food supply chains, we're typically talking about restaurants, retailers that can be both regional or large and national and global in scope, and then also convenience. So where I want to start and kind of let's walk backwards a little bit, and this will help you understand from the participation side. So if you go into, let's say you go into your local quick serve restaurant and you order a fruit cup or a side salad with your regular menu item, what you don't think about is all of the inputs that it actually takes to execute on that fruit cup. And in a quick serve environment where they've got maybe 2,000 restaurants across the country, they're serving 20, 30,000 fruit cups a day. Very complex supply chains, very complex execution points just to deliver on that fruit cup, because there may be 4 or 5 different items in that cup. Those 4 or 5 different items may come from all the way across the globe. They've got to be harvested and picked at just the right time, at just the right place, and then that product's got to get into the supply chain to serve to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So these are extremely complex supply chains. Typically, there's not a whole lot of visibility in those supply chains, and we'll start with the first upstream at the supplier side. So typically that's the manufacturer, the producer, the grower, the shipper, the one either making the fresh food or harvesting and producing the fresh food. And then really it's not all grown typically in the same spot, in the same place, at the same time of the year all the time. So you've got to work with the supplier side to figure out when that product's either going to be harvested, coming out of the ground, or when it's going to be manufactured. Then additionally, you've got to transport that product. You actually got to get it into market. So you've got to take it from manufacturer, supplier, you've got to transport it, and you've got to maintain all the proper controls around temperature, food safety standards, and all of those demands that are met on the food safety and quite frankly, the fresh food supply chain. Then after transportation, it's got to go into distribution. So somebody's got to manage that inventory, right? Either that's a large distributor, that could be someone that's distributing out multi-state, that could be a direct store drop distributor that's delivering into a urban area, but that product's got to get from supplier, transported into distribution, and then to the back of the restaurant or retailer. So very multi-layered, a lot of cost layered within that supply chain. And all of these complexities really lead to a lot of lack of visibility and collaboration in the supply chain. With all of these multiple layers and all of these hidden costs, what we go to market with to help customers streamline their supply chain and provide full visibility and provide full PO management is in our managed procurement services. So it's a complete outsource of procurement and distribution for companies in these verticals. That's one challenge, right? PO management, data visibility, where costs in my supply chain. So we've got a solution there. When I talked earlier about execution of transportation, so think about it. In most cases, on the fresh food side of the business, most companies are transporting what's called less than truckload, or LTL is the acronym. So in the less than truckload temperature controlled environment, as you can imagine, that's even more complex than either a straight truckload or a regular non-temp controlled less than truckload environment. So it takes all the right operational execution. We have teams in our Robinson Fresh consolidation services that actually tailor less than truckload consolidation, so our customers can count on product getting there at the right time. And then conversely, I'll talk about maybe the last really big challenge outside of visibility is inventory management in fresh food supply chain. So no one wants to tell their customer when they order that fruit cup, sorry, we don't have fruit cups today. Strawberries didn't make it, right? Or when you go into your local retailer around 4th of July and you want your watermelons and they don't have watermelons. So inventory management, it's absolutely critical in the fresh food supply chain. So our replenishment services help supply chain partners get product at the right time and at the right price and at the right temp all of the time. Does that make sense? So talked about supplier,
yep,
logistics and transportation, distribution, and then within that, the challenges around visibility and PO management. And then we talked about execution on LTL, and then the critical one, inventory management.
Yeah, no, Todd. I mean, a lot of moving parts there, a lot of considerations. So, certainly, the next time I order a fruit cup, my mind's gonna explode. Thinking about all these things that went into just getting that fruit cup and having it fresh and taste. Usually as a consumer, you think about you just want it to taste good and be fresh, and and be a satisfying part of your meal. But then if you actually think about everything that went through, to execute and get that there on time and in the right condition, I think it's pretty impressive. You mentioned a few things. I certainly want to get to visibility. But before that, I mean, I think if you had to boil it all down then into some critical factors or attributes, that define a best-in-class procurement to delivery operation, what would those factors be?
Yeah, so either factors or, as you term them, attributes. So for us, it's looking and ensuring that you have the right people, process, and technology to be able to execute on these types of supply chains, to be able to manage all of the complexities around the globe that happen, both at a micro level and a macro level. So let's start with people first, okay? You need vertical experts in your industry that know those commodities, and they are trusted advisors. You need those people to execute on the right strategies every day, and those are your strategies that they're executing on. First thing, processes. You need to ensure around fresh food supply chains, with all of the multiple layers of both government regulations, food safety acts, all of the temperature control requirements that go with this, you've got to ensure that you have the right processes in place, okay? And then lastly, the technology platform. So you need to ensure you have an all-encompassing PO management system that can aggregate orders all the way from individual store locations, individual restaurant locations, back through distribution. And so you can tender orders, bulk orders, back through to supply. And you need that all-encompassing PO management, whether you're, doesn't matter what vertical you're in, it doesn't matter if you're in a business to environment or also a business to consumer environment. So that all-encompassing PO management is it's a full contract and order management, so you can see everything in your supply chain.
So yeah, no, those are a lot of great, great pieces of advice there, and certainly I think all those things are important. I talked earlier about how the fresh food supply chain is kind of unique, and not all supply chains are created equal. But even within the fresh food supply chain, I would assume that there's some diversity and uniqueness there. Like if you're in the restaurant business, it's kind of different than if you're in the grocery retail business, and if you're in the food distribution business. Is that right? I mean, do each of those like sub verticals have their own unique requirements and different things that, from a people, process, and technology standpoint, have to be accounted for?
Yes, there are, and then within each vertical. So when we talked about people and the vertical expertise, they're going to know those commodities, and quite frankly, when it comes down to the technology interface, it's going to matter what catalog, which means what SKUs assortments either go into the back of the restaurant or onto the retailer's shelf. So highly complex, highly diverse, highly different items go into different verticals based around that. Does that make sense? So you've got to have the people, processes, and technology that meet the demands of those differences.
Right. So let's talk about one of the aspects that you brought up earlier, and that's that is visibility. It sounds like visibility and data analysis plays an important role here. Can you give some examples of how enhanced visibility leads to improved operational performance?
Yeah, I won't give the powers that be might not allow me to give specific examples. So I'll give some broad examples of how we can help execute better on data management. The first thing that you want to know is that you want to own your own data, right? It's yours. It's not someone else's. It's not the supplier's data. It's not the distributor's data. It's your data because you own the consumer and you own the product within that. So our customers want real-time data so they can make faster, more accurate decisions within their supply chains. And that means finding costs that shouldn't be there, and mining the data for those costs, and then taking those costs out of the supply chain. The broad example I'll give is each partner that I talked about in the supply chain earlier, the supplier, the transportation provider, the distribution partner, they all have different levels of sophistication in their technology. And that level will depend upon the visibility that you gain and that you have with your data. We like to talk about chalkboards to lasers with folks' systems within the fresh food supply chain. So what I'm talking about there is on the chalkboard side, orders may be tendered or procured via fax or a phone call, right? And that PO may be generated by a somewhat antiquated type system. Or on the laser side, POs may be generated by electronic data interface. So via EDI, where connections are made directly with suppliers and distributors. So all the systems are different. Everybody in the supply chain, I can tell you, is on a different operating system, a different language, a different SKU catalog. Our core MP technology with managed procurement systems, actually, it sits over the top of the entire supply chain. It aggregates all of that data on our customers' behalf. So you own the data and you have one source of the truth of that data. So then you can make real-time decisions on your inventory levels that we talked about. If you need to get product out of the supply chain around food safety, you have data there to make those decisions. So it allows the customer to own their own data. Additionally, we provide, you need the analytics engine, and you need the analytics teams to both present that data back in dashboards in real time, and you need teams to interpret that data on your behalf. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, and I was going to say, in many ways, we've been talking about how some of the unique characteristics of the food supply chain, the fresh food supply chain, but when it comes to data and data aggregation, I mean, I think that's a common thread across all supply chains, right? The fact that you have this diversity of capabilities across the different stakeholders in the supply chain, and part of the challenge really is how do you bring that all together, right? To have that one source of truth, or be able to have that truly end-to-end visibility when you've got some participants that are more manual systems or chalkboards, using chalkboards or maybe even spreadsheets and things like that. And then you've got those that are more, obviously more automated and more, more sophisticated in nature. So it sounds like, part of the initial challenge is really, bringing that diversity of information together, right?
Yeah, it's where that information is housed, in what format or language that information is housed, what catalog that information sits in, and then you need a technology, an extremely high level technology that's updated daily to bring all of that data together into one format. So you can read it, you interpret it, you make game time decisions on that. You can interpret that data and make strategy decisions around that, whether to pull items off the shelf or add a limited time offering. How did that perform? So all of those things come into play. And the MP technology that is proprietary for us, it allows all of those partners within the supply chain to tap into that technology so they can input their data accordingly.
Great. And I would think that's obviously critical to from a food safety standpoint. If there's ever a call or anything like that, to have that visibility to kind of be able to trace back to see what happened along the supply chain, right?
It's critical. It's critical in any fresh food supply chain, and it's really critical when products coming from around the globe, all at different times. And if it's on the produce side, it's where it was harvested, who harvested it, and where's that at in the supply chain. On the manufacturing side, sometimes there are several inputs on fresh foods, especially if you think about the convenience side of the business, where sandwiches are pre-made and then served on a shelf, all of those inputs from all those different suppliers. Critical to have the data and the traceability in your system.
Right, right. So how did most companies, such as grocery retailers and restaurants and food service distributors manage, the procurement to delivery process? I mean, is this something that they, mostly manage in-house, or do they tend to outsource, parts of all of this?
Yeah, when we describe this, really, essentially, there's a couple different options. The best way to describe it is an in-source option, which is self-distribution, versus an outsource option, which is non-self-distributing. Okay, so I'll start with the in-source or the self-distribution, which has a lot of pros and cons to that model, and I'll walk you through those. So with the in-source, you do get a high degree of control. You get a high degree of leveraging your technology. But conversely, on the flip side, there's a high level of investment, both in capital, in infrastructure, in warehousing, in trucking, and people and equipment. Additionally, with that high capital investment, it's really slow to change. It's slow to adapt, and it's slow to enter any new markets that you would want to go into. So imagine if you're not into the Portland and Seattle market, for example, and you're self-distributing or you're in-source. You need to put up a warehouse. You need to put that warehouse up. You've got to hire folks to manage that warehouse, and then you've got to put the trucks or lease the trucks and drivers to deliver that product. So that's in-source, that's self-distribution, pros and cons there. And then with outsource or non-self-distributing companies, you essentially turn the entire procurement and distribution process over to a distribution company. There's some pros and cons here also, right? You get faster speed to market, low capital investment, and then conversely, on the flip side, you really don't have any control on your supply chain. You can't control the costs in your supply chain, and quite frankly, you don't have a lot of visibility to your own product in those types of outsourced distribution and procurement options. So what we have done in the marketplace, we've heard both the pros and cons of both of these types of models, and quite frankly, we have a third option through our managed procurement services, which it has the look and feel of an in-source because we work on your behalf, but it has the benefits of the outsource where you're fast speed to market with the low investment, along with we provide you the technology and the processes and the people to give you the visibility and control you want in your supply chain.
It sounds like, yeah, no, it sounds like, I cover, the transportation market, most closely in my research. And certainly one of the trends that has been happening there for a long time now is what we call what the industry has been calling managed transportation services, which is really, I kind of put it, define it as the right mix of people, processes, and technologies, right, that the customer wants, right, depending on their specific needs, to be able to help them scale up or down, their operations, as needed. So it sounds like, the model that you've created there is something similar, where you're bringing together the right mix of, people, processes, and technologies, where it's a kind of a middle ground solution, relative to doing it all in-house versus handing everything to a third party.
Yeah, it allows, quite frankly, the customer to do what they're really, really good at. That's taking care of the consumer when they come into the restaurant and serving them the absolute best quality product at a great price. It allows the convenience location to really execute on fast turns on inventory and getting consumers in and out of that convenience space. And then it allows retailers realistically to get into spaces that maybe they weren't in before. Grab and go meals, take home meal kits. Additionally, the business to consumer front, which are really good at that customer interface through their apps and their technology, and they need a back of the house system for their procurement capabilities. And our managed procurement services actually does that for both business to consumers, business to business, those folks, so they can concentrate on what they're really good at and allow us to execute through people, process, and technology what we're really good at.
Right. So and kind of we're running short on time here, so I've got just a couple of more questions. So,
okay.
So you've talked about data management. You touched on food safety a little bit. I mean, what other trends are you seeing in the industry?
Yeah, on the fresh food side of the industry, so we talked about food safety, traceability, the big one in data management, owning your own data. A couple other trends that we see. First one being inventory management. I touched on that earlier. Really, that's about just-in-time inventory and who is going to carry the cost of inventory on their books, where that inventory sits. Consumer habits are changing faster and faster every day, and we need to execute on inventory turns faster. Limited time offerings at restaurant chains are happening more and more. That's where an item's there for 2 months and then off the menu another month, and you don't want to be long on inventory, but you want to have enough inventory. And oh, by the way, we want your supply chain partners to have that inventory set on their books. So inventory management's big. The other additional one is what we call cost containment. So within the convenience and the restaurant side of the business, there's static menu prices. So those menu prices need to stay static for a certain amount of time. But yet the supply chain that we talked about is highly variable, right? It goes up and down, and you've got a price that's flat. So our cost containment and the discussions we have around that is really managing the inbound purchase order and ensuring those contracts flow through to distribution, and then management of the point of sale and the actual correct price from distribution into the store location. So cost containment, inventory management are two other large trends that we talk to customers about.
Great. Yeah. I mean, I know here in New England, certainly over the summertime, you see the lobster rolls being kind of the limited time only, summer type of menu item, and that's a good point about the cost containment, because you do see that particularly from the restaurant side or the quick service type of meals, where it's $4.99, or $3.99 for X, Y, and Z. And but the reality is that, like you said, that's based on when those prices are set. There's a certain operating cost behind that, but those things tend to change over time. So being able to manage that so you can still make a margin at that price point, it's something I hadn't thought about in terms of being an ongoing challenge.
Yeah, you want to either on the retail shelf, you're gonna add something around the summertime, or at the restaurant level, or convenience to drive traffic through your door, right? You want to get the consumer in through your door, and you want them to repeat. You want them to repeat coming back through your door. So if you don't have visibility into your supply chain and you're not delivering at the right price, that consumer will come back and buy again, you're going to lose them, right? And then additionally, if you don't have enough inventory to execute on that, that consumer is not going to come back. You're not going to get them back back through your doors. So
Yeah.
execution is key.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Todd, as a way to wrap up, I mean, what questions should grocery retailers, restaurants, and other companies in the fresh food supply chain, ask themselves to assess whether they have the right people, processes, and technologies to drive continuous improvement in the procurement to deliver process?
Yeah. So the questions I would ask, and these would be applicable realistically for any vertical that you're in the fresh food industry, is do you have the right procurement partner that can give you full visibility to your entire supply chain? Do you have that? Can you see everything within your supply chain, and can you make decisions based upon that visibility? Can you see that? Do you own your own data? Do you own that, or does somebody else in the supply chain own that? Do you have people that are experts in the vertical you are in? Critical. Do you have a partner with the right processes to execute on your supply chain strategy? Not the supply chain partner strategy, but your strategy that you have for your supply chain. And then lastly, can their technology manage an infinite catalog of SKUs? Are they capable of that? I'd like to say here at Robinson Fresh and CH Robinson, we answer yes to all these questions every day. Adrian, I'd like to thank you for your time. And if I do get up to New England and you offer me the Lobster Fest, I'm going to take you up on your offer. How about that?
Absolutely. We'll do. Well, Todd, like I always say at the end of our episodes, we always just manage to scratch the surface on the topics that we cover here. But I think we definitely covered a lot of ground today, and you shared some great insights and advice on what's going on in this industry. So again, thank you for making the time to be with us today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Great. And I want to thank those of you that joined us. If you're watching this episode on demand, either at the CH Robinson website or on Talking Logistics, and you've got a question or a comment for Todd, you can post it there. I'm sure that he'd be more than happy to respond via that medium. Again, thank you all for joining us, and look forward to seeing you in a future episode of Talking Logistics. Have a great day.